All right. Welcome back to Panhandle Pulse today, guys. I got a great guest in Ed Gutentag.
Gutentag, yes.
Gutentag. He's from Panama City, and you're a cinematographer. Done some good.
I say now I'm a storyteller,
Okay. Storyteller.
and I brought some visual aids to help, and yeah. So my background is I started taking pictures when I was about 6 years old, and my dad had a movie camera,
Okay.
and I could hold it now. I remember the handle was somehow he got it burnt or melted. It was a Minolta, and it was beautiful. It was like porcelain, like a beige porcelain. There was a beautiful like latch that would you would look at that latch today and go, "Oh, that's really cool," you
Yeah.
know. And it was 8 millimeter, so this is the predecessor to Super 8.
Okay.
And it was a little spool of film. It might have been a minute or a minute and a half, so 16 millimeter. And, um, for those that might not know the metric system, 35 millimeter film, everybody just so 24 millimeters is 1 inch,
Okay.
and then so 16 millimeters is smaller, and it was measured diagonally.
Okay.
So it's a 16 millimeter diagonal, much like TVs.
Right.
If you have an 80-inch TV, it's not side to side,
Yep.
or
Corner to corner.
it's corner to corner, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. Top to bottom.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, one it's diagonal measurement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Top left corner, bottom right corner.
yeah, corner to corner. So it was he had this movie camera, and then I remember I think I was 6 at Christmas, and I got a camera. I got a Brownie, which the first Brownies were made by Kodak, and they were leather.
Okay.
And then mine was plastic. So it was probably a kid's Brownie, and it shot 120
Gotcha.
film. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I really don't even remember shooting with that. I do remember playing with my dad's movie camera, and then I started projecting because our neighbors had a projector, and my dad was, may he rest in peace. My dad was really big about go see if the neighbors have a shovel. And I was like, can't we buy our own
Yeah.
shovel? So the projector I kind of understood. So I remember I returned the projector, and my neighbor's wife said, "Oh, did you use it?" "Yeah, yeah, I know how to use it." "You used it?" "Yeah, it was really easy. I just,
Right.
"You did that?" "Yeah, yeah. Wasn't that hard? You just put the sprockets, there. Mel Brooks said once, somebody said, "What's the hardest thing about making a movie?" And he said, "Putting those little holes in it."
Okay.
You know,
Uh,
so you put the film on the sprocket, and
Yep.
you made sure the loop was the right size, and there was a diagram, and it's pretty easy to follow even at a young age. And I projected all the movies, and
Okay.
when it came back from the pharmacy,
Right.
because you
Yeah.
dropped it off. And
Yep. You get the strip there. You'd have to
yeah,
wait for your movie strip in a can.
it was in it was in a plastic container, and
Yep.
it was quick, but that was my introduction to film.
Okay. And so what got you leading to you wanted to do that? What was there an interest that you said when you seen the camera from your
I
dad and
mean,
showing thing?
I'd be lying if I said I knew what I wanted to do at the age of 6.
Right.
I didn't, but I remember some sort of pearl enlightened moments. My dad, may he rest in peace. Um, we went to Florida. I grew up in New Jersey,
Okay.
and we went to Miami Beach on a vacation. We were little, and I had never seen coral before. And whatever hotel we stayed at, they were using coral, dead coral. I didn't even know coral was a living
Yep.
thing, as hardscape. They had chunks of coral
Right.
like in the Meridian. And I was like, wow, what is that stuff? Because I had never seen coral in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
And so I took a picture of it, and the pictures came back. And my dad said to me, it almost makes me kind of emotional. He said, if you're going to take pictures of stuff, and he wasn't mad, and he says, if you're going to take pictures of things, make it interesting.
Yeah.
Because he thought it was a boring picture.
Right.
But in my mind, it was like, wow, this is a piece of coral, you
Yeah.
know? And so I never forgot that. And then I also remember hearing Francis Coppola say, he was sitting in a bar, it was a video, and he says, sometimes, we're looking this way, here I'm having a conversation with you. Sometimes you have to turn around 180 degrees and see what's going on
Right.
somewhere else, and, so I started taking pictures just with like an Instamatic and the flash cube. And I don't know if you remember all that stuff, but, this was way, way, way before digital.
Okay.
And then, um, like professionally, I started when I was a teenager. And when I was a sophomore in high school, my parents took me out of public school
Okay.
and I went to boarding school, so private boarding school
Yep.
in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And that was the best thing they could have ever done. It was upsetting.
Yeah.
My mother told me she never saw my dad cry. And when they left, it was a 6-hour drive from where we lived. And, but, I kind of discovered myself and I did better in school because I have ADD.
Yeah.
And, if I wasn't interested, I was out the window.
Right.
It wasn't as much that I couldn't sit still and I wasn't necessarily hyper or what do they call it?
Yeah.
ADHD.
ADHD now. It's hyperman.
Yeah. There's a book I read. There's a guy at Harvard that has written like 18 books on it. He's the foremost authority, Ned Hallowell, and he said, I met him and I read his book, but only like 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah.
Because I was reading it and I was like, first of all, I can't sit and read a book anymore. Um, Although I have one I have to read, and I audible.
Right.
I mean, I could tell you exactly where I was on the road when I heard a certain thing,
Yeah.
in the book. I love Audible. And because of it, I'm really well read now. Whereas it's funny, I heard Stanley Kubrick say, I didn't start reading really until like after high school, sort of the
Right.
same thing. And I, so I'm reading this book. It's called Driven to Distraction. And he has ADD and he had to write it with another doctor. And I was reading it and I was like, I could have written this book, so I closed it. And I told my dad about it because he had it. And I said, you should read this book. It's good. And I got on medicine. My parents put me on Ritalin when I was a teen, like 10, 11, 12, 13. And
Okay.
I didn't like it. It was weird. And then maybe when I was in my mid to late 30s, I started exploring again. And I talked to my therapist about it. And he couldn't write it because you have to be a PhD. And so I went and I had a test. I had to take a test. It was called the TOVA, Test of Variable Attention. It was the hardest 30 minutes of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not interested or focused in it, you don't want to do it.
Yeah, you have a screen and you have to, and I was, so he said, well, you passed. I was, oh, I don't have it. No, you failed,
Yeah.
so I got on Ritalin again in my mid to late 30s. And I could tell you exactly where I was when took the first pill because Ritalin works 20 minutes.
Right.
It's not like an SSRI where it takes time. And I was like, wow, my brain and my mouth are kind of sunk up, they're in sync. This is amazing. So I took Ritalin for quite a while, and about 8 or 9 years ago, I had a friend that was taking Vyvanse, and that was even better. So I take Vyvanse, and it's just really helpful, and it allows me to focus. And I find that like with my props here, like, when I'm taking pictures or flying my drone, I'm like, I don't need it.
Right.
I'm just in it.
It's something you're passionate about, and that's why you're sort of focused. You enjoy it, and that's why you stay attentive to
But
it.
and yeah, exactly. And the point that I wanted to make, 'cause I know we're not talking about photography and what I do, but like my podcast is going to be like, of course, what do you do? But I kind of want to know who people are
Right.
as well. So when I met Dr. Hallowell, he came and spoke at my daughter's private school, and it was a small enough group that I got to speak with him. And I said, hey, it's really nice to meet you. I said, I have to admit, I started reading your book, but I put it down after 3 pages because you were telling me my life story. And he goes, oh, that's fine. And I said, but I want to ask you a question. My daughter was, I don't know, 8 or 9 or
Okay.
10. And I said, how will I know if she'll come down with, like, it was a cold?
Right.
How will I know if she is going to have ADD? And he walked in close to me, and he was just so New England warm and, friendly. And he put his hand on my forearm, and he says, well, if she does, consider it a blessing.
Yeah.
I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah. He says, because having ADD is like having a Ferrari for a brain, except you have bicycle brakes.
Right.
And I embrace it, and because I could definitely tell you that I get frustrated.
Yeah.
But when I'm into something, I'm deep.
Yeah. All the way, 100% into every
Yeah,
bit of it.
yeah, yeah. And look, even if you don't have ADD, there's some issue we all have. Not to say that there's something wrong with you. It's like, because I remember my first therapist when I told him I was thinking about getting back on Ritalin,
Yeah.
and I said, I think I'm going to go to these. I think at the time it was called CHAD. It was an acronym for parents or people with kids that had ADD to get help. And I said, I think I'm going to start going to these meetings. He says, Ed, why don't you start by figuring out what's right with you
Yeah.
instead of what's wrong with you, you know?
Yeah. Focus on the positive part of it, not the negative piece.
Yeah,
Don't use
yeah,
that as a disability. I think that's where culture tries to change us. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s through high school, and they try to fix you if you have ADHD back then, or like me, I had dyslexia, and I still have dyslexia. So you're like, I'm focused on a certain part, but the reading aspect of it back in the 20s and that did do it. Audiobook wasn't back around then for me to listen to all the books, which now I listen to them all the time while I travel.
yeah.
Love it. Pick up all kinds of information. But so don't use everyone that's listening that is your kryptonite. That could be your superpower. Like now I'm very skilled in engineering and math and can memorize a ton of things because I've compensated for the English, the aspect of typing, making sure you spell the word correctly or understanding the purpose of the words is hard for people with dyslexia.
Yeah,
And
because
same with that.
because I have friends with dyslexia, and I learned about all these things when I was in boarding school because it was predominantly for kids that had learning disabilities.
Right.
So it wasn't behavior, but those learning disabilities did affect my behavior, and I got in fights
Right. Yep.
because I got frustrated, and I was like, what? And you just start, hitting or punching or,
Yeah.
and you get in trouble. And so I often say, like, I'm really, really into Stoic philosophy right now. I have been for the last few years, that it's not what happens to us, it's how we handle it.
Right.
Because I remember I had a coworker complaining to me that I stole a customer. I said, I didn't steal your customer. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
I said, those people no, they were with the people I was talking to. And I said, well, then you should know that.
Right.
If you don't, well, you don't know what I've been through in my life. And I said, you want me to give you my list?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's everybody's been through something,
Right.
So I found through, visuals, because quite a few people tell me, God, your work is amazing, and I don't say it. I don't lead with that at
Right.
all. I just let the work speak for itself because, you don't want to come across as braggadocious or egotistical, and especially like living down here in the South. It's, I'm from New York, New Jersey. I lived in Los Angeles for a long time,
Okay.
but I'm also an opinionated person. But I think I know I have common sense
Right.
too, and you don't want to piss anybody off or hurt anybody's feelings. And it's an actor friend of mine said to me once, to know you is to love you.
Yeah.
It's like, or I'll say to people, I'm like sushi, I'm an acquired taste. And, a friend of mine actually said to me today, well, you shouldn't talk about that. And I'm like, no, it's not, I'm not here to protect your feelings,
Right.
and it's, so, when you live in this is a different culture,
Yep.
really, when you think about it. Where are you from?
So I grew up in West Virginia, right outside of DC.
I mean, that's a different
Yep,
culture.
it's totally
Yeah.
different culture for moving down here.
Yeah.
You have the West Virginia jokes and all those, but now you come to Florida, and we thought, well, okay, we moved away from that, but now you got Florida man. So you're like, I don't know which one was better, West Virginia jokes or Florida man jokes. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
totally different. It's a different way of living up that way. We're near DC in the city. You have a whole different mindset of people up that way, and then down here to the south is, like you said, completely different from up north.
You know, and, so it made me realize that you can really miss out on some good relationships if you're going to go, you voted for that, or, you voted for him. No, no, then I can't possibly like you.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I think that's a great thing, and uh, I just met you a few weeks ago and text to set this up, but not on a political realm or any. But my whole philosophy in life is the same. You can be a Democrat, Republican, be a human being to each other, and you're all going to get along. You all have differences. We all have some setbacks. We all have different experiences that we've come from the past, but we're all human at the same side. So we can sit and go through the process of what do we like, what do we don't like politic wise, what's going to be better for the future. But at the end of the day, between here and there, it doesn't make a difference.
I was at a I don't want to say an exclusive party. It was an invite only. It was at a beautiful home, and it was a book signing, and maybe 40 or 50 of us. And I started talking to this woman, and she said something like, things that happen in the past affect us.
Yeah.
And, I think she was talking about the Holocaust. She was Jewish. It was a lot of Jewish people there. And um, I said, look, I don't really want to bring up politics, and I don't care who you voted for.
Yeah.
And before I moved down here, I lived in Atlanta.
Okay.
So I moved from New York to Los Angeles in '88. I got married, and my daughter's 29 now. In 2014, I moved to Atlanta to
Okay.
work because the film business was sinking in LA, and Atlanta had a big tax incentive. So
Yeah.
I worked in Atlanta, and I stayed there for 6 years before I moved down here. And well, no, that before that, what happened was, she'll watch this at some point. I don't care. We talk about it. She doesn't like talking about it, and we were new together, madly in love, and I was over her house, and she had a son, and the TV was on, and Obama was on or something, and she goes, that effing Obama. And I went, God, not not that she was a Republican. That didn't bother me. It
Yeah.
was like, why would you say that? That effing Obama. God, I never had to think about this before because we never talked about
Right.
politics. And it just kind of blew my mind. And like my friends, I'm not married to them.
Yeah.
They're just friends. But if you're going to be in a, intimate loving marriage relationship.
Right.
You kind of gotta.
Yeah, you have to have some kind of agreements in your political world, your religious backgrounding, and just your vision for life in general. If you're going to be
I just
married
thought
together, it's
because
just hard.
she's Jewish, I'm Jewish, and I just thought most Jews are democratic, or and but anyway, that's yeah. So so I moved to LA in '88,
Okay.
and I started working. I drove a camera truck, so it was like a box van that this guy had. He was a great carpenter, so he had shelved it out and built a dark room because we were still doing film. So I worked as the driver slash second assistant cameraman.
Okay.
So the way the camera department works, if it's a big enough job, there's a film loader.
Yeah.
So he just loads the film in the magazines. He brings it to the set. The second assistant handles giving it to the first assistant and does the, slate marker,
Gotcha.
take one. And then, you all kind of work together. But the first assistant is also in England, they're known as a focus puller
Okay.
because they're the ones that are sitting next to the camera operator and they're on what we call the knob.
Yeah.
And now it's all,
It's all automatic now versus back in the
well,
day you were twisting it versus.
I'm getting a new camera called the Ronin 4D
Okay.
where it has a LiDAR deal on the top and it does the focus for you.
Okay.
Yeah. And, so it's changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and, so that was my first job. I do commercials and then I met a guy that was going to do a movie and he hired me. It was called Other People's Money. That was, I think, my first movie out of LA.
Okay.
But we shot in New York and Connecticut, and then we came back to LA. And then from there, you just meet more people, and my people could look at my IMDb and imdb.com, and they could see, I've probably done over 100 different movies now, and I worked on Titanic and Mighty Joe Young, and I worked with Spielberg on War of the Worlds. And so I've gotten to work with some of the greatest people in the industry. And, and people will ask me, well, what'd you do? And I usually just say Titanic because everybody's seen that 3 or 4 times.
Right.
But really the best, I would say the one of the best jobs I ever did was I got I got a call from a friend of mine to interview um, Harrison Ford, Robin Williams, and it was another celebrity, and it was a creative director from London that came to LA to interview these people because his agency was hired by Prince Charles, or Prince Charles, one of his trusts,
Right.
and the trust was about saving the rainforest. So Prince Charles opened up his black book and went, here, all right, Robin Williams said he'll do it. Harrison Ford said he'll do it. And the Dalai Lama.
Okay.
So I wasn't supposed to shoot that part of it, but I was on my, I joke about it. I was on my best behavior. No, I just did my job and I was very helpful. They were from London. I picked them up and I had worked with Robin Williams before. So, and one of the reasons why I got the job was my friend recommended me because he knew I was comfortable because we did shoot digital.
Okay.
And I was also not fazed by celebrities. And they were, when we went to shoot Robin Williams, the director, we were talking and I said, we were talking about Robin Williams and I said I'd worked with him a couple of times. Not that he would remember me, but just you didn't have to work with him. If you'd seen him perform or on talk shows, you just let him go.
Right.
I mean, your plumber would know that.
Yeah.
So I said, would you mind if I make a suggestion? Because I'm not sure if he seemed uneasy about it, but I said I would just give him an idea of what you want. Just let him rip. Just don't, you know. And it went really well. And then we went to Harrison Ford's house the next day, and we got into his house and he greeted us. It wasn't like his agent or his press person. He was barefoot and he was like, hurry up, come in. The dogs, don't let the dog out.
Yeah.
And it's like it's freaking Luke Skywalker, Indiana Jones, you know, and he's all barefoot. And we go in, and I actually was more impressed once meeting Joe Torre when he was the manager of the Dodgers, because I'm a huge baseball. Yeah. So anyway, we get in the house, and it was just 3 or 4 of us, and we're introduced, and Harrison Ford looks at me and he says, "How long, do you think?" I said, "Well, I'm just gonna blah blah blah," and he was finishing my sentences because he's been in how many movies?
Right. Yeah.
He
Can't even
knows
count.
he could probably light it himself,
Yeah.
right? He says, "Oh, great, you're just gonna use some backlight." "Yeah, I'm just gonna, how long?" I said, "I should be ready in 15, 20 minutes." "All right, just call me, guys, when you're ready, because I got some stuff to do." And so he comes down, he's sitting in the chair, and there's a sort of protocol and a decorum on set. A movie set's not a democracy.
Okay.
It's a dictatorship.
By the director.
Yeah, the director is, and everybody follows that lead. But he wasn't. The director was the creator, and he wasn't the creative director from this agency. So he wasn't a director.
Gotcha.
And I'm like waiting. Harrison Ford sitting there, and as an actor, because he's acting, he's sitting in a chair and he's got to say some lines, but he's himself. And I'm just waiting for him to say anything. And I was like, oh man, I got to break the ice here. So the week before, Sully Sullenberger landed in the Hudson.
Okay. Yeah.
And Harrison Ford flies a helicopter and a plane. So how do you get somebody to talk about something that's interesting
to
them? So I said, so I just broke the ice. I didn't wait for him anymore. It was too long a silence.
Right.
He was nervous. Oh, the director said to me, I don't think he wants us here. I said, if he didn't want us here, we wouldn't be here.
Right. You would already know when you first come in the door. You would have felt that.
Yeah. So he says, so I broke the ice and I said, so what'd you think of that landing last week? Just like you and I are talking, know? He goes, oh man, that was it, and I don't remember exactly what we talked about because we had to get our business done, and so it's, like all this stuff, that I brought, these are just tools.
Right.
And, what I want to do is like, I want to use these tools to help tell your story. But this, I could tell you what these are in a bit, but, obviously that's a drone, that's a camera. This is a Matterport camera. This shoots virtual tours.
Okay.
And it spins just like this on a tripod. But this stuff, this technology, these are all computers.
Yeah.
Right. These computers don't replace a great story.
Right.
It's got to be a great story. And I was just listening on the way here, Steve Jobs and John Lasseter.
Uh-huh.
So Steve Jobs bought what became Pixar from George Lucas. John Lasseter was his main hire. And they actually said it in the podcast, we worked on Toy Story for 1.5 years, the story.
Yep, just the story itself.
The script. So our great animation or great content, great pictures, great virtual tours are not going to fix a bad story.
Right.
Which I loved, because and that's what I'm starting to do. Some people say, how come you're not retired? Because I'm 67. I'm glad I don't look it. Sometimes it bothers me. Sometimes I can't do anything about it.
That's right. That's how God made you. You're perfectly fine the way.
I came out on May 3rd, 1958, and that's not changing.
That's right.
And so it's, I think that my strength is, okay, I understand how to use this stuff. not only could I teach you how to use this probably because you're in IT
Right.
and you understand technology, I'm pretty sure I could teach a 10-year-old
Yeah.
how to do all this stuff. The drone, maybe that might crash it a few times. I've crashed it a few times. But like I've been doing these sort of commercials or social media shorts
Yep.
with real estate agents, and I'm going to branch out to business people,
Okay.
and because specifically, like if you look at real estate videos on Instagram, they're all the same
Yeah. They're
to
all the
me.
same.
It's um, the Ronin shot and walking through, and they have the graphics done in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Right.
I mean, I have a shot that I could send you if you want to put it up here, where I'm going to be doing a job for this new conference center that's opening. This guy bought a 133,000 square foot building and its surrounding property.
Is that here in the area, somewhere
It's in
nearby?
Lynn Haven.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell him about you.
Yeah.
He's not big on being on camera. He's a great guy, but he's an engineer.
Oh yeah. So we'll have the camera off and we can just talk to him and
Yeah,
speak, and we'll be fine.
yeah. And because he wants to start promoting it,
Yeah.
because I imagine he's got a lot of money hanging out there. And I mean, he told me about some of his monthly bills in there. So, so I thought, going back to the storytelling part of it, it's like, um, how do we announce this building in a cool way? So I thought, I I've used people in Vietnam, I've used people in India to do some work on my pictures
Okay.
because it saves me time.
Right.
It costs me, but it saves me time, and it's not that expensive. So I thought, wow, this is I know what I'm going to do. I mean, the building's huge. It's 133,000 square feet. So I'm up in the air with the drone. So I have this moving shot,
Yeah.
and I told the company, I go, here's the shot, because you got to give them the digital file.
Okay.
Put a tarp on the whole building, and then have a helicopter come in with a hook and pull the tarp off, and then announce the building. And they did it for free because
Yes.
they want.
So they're doing the AI version of the helicopter coming in, taking the tarp off.
Yeah, it's all AI. They did it for free because they want my business. And I asked them, I said, out of curiosity, what would have you charged me? $50.
Yeah. It's nowadays technology and the people in the industry, you can get everything done.
So, and I'm about to do some work for my primary care physician. And he's like, I got to do a podcast. I want to do a podcast. It's more of a catchphrase because he has no idea what a podcast is,
Right.
only because he's heard it and maybe he's watched a few. I send him a bunch, and I go, you want me to just show up? How do you know I have the camera to do it? How do you know I have the Well, you do, don't you? Well,
Right.
I go, so we're meeting this evening, because I told him no.
Yeah.
I said no. In fact, he wanted me to do some other stuff, and I told him no. I said, I don't know if I really want to work with you, because he started renegotiating with me after he agreed, and I said, I'm not interested.
Right.
And why? Because you've wasted my time already, and if you waste my time again, it's shame on me.
Yeah.
And so he's finally got it. He's an amazing doctor. And he's starting a sort of a wellness branch where he's teaching people how to eat properly, how to cook properly, so that they don't get hypertension and heart disease and all
Right.
these other
How to live
things.
a better life by actually eating stuff that's good for us.
And I said, look, so I realized I needed to start speaking to him in his language instead of, not that I didn't, but I said, look, because I found some flaws in his understanding. It's not a flawed person, just in his understanding.
Yeah.
And I said, look, the thing that pissed me off is that I went in It's not going to be the first time he hears it because I told him in person if he ever sees this, but he agreed to a certain price. And I said, all right, well, I need half of the money up front before I get started. And I came in and he wanted to renegotiate. And wasn't pissed off. I just said, no.
Right.
I go, well, can't you just do a little? So this is what he says. Can you just do a little to edit so I see that I like it? No, I don't need to prove myself to you or anybody else. If I say I'm going to do it, it's going to be better than what I say. And goodbye.
Yeah.
And I said that before I left, I said, so what if I came in here and I said, I've got something and it's like more than a cold and it's, and you say, okay, well, you need to do this, and you need to take that, and you need to take this. And then I say, okay, well, I'll pay you when I get better.
Right.
He goes, no, it's different. No, it's not any different.
Yeah.
You're asking me to prove to you that and you don't want to pay me? No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Because I think that maybe I'm making a generalization that people think that artists, because I'm an artist. I don't play the guitar. I don't really paint, but this is what I do. This is my is it vocation or avocation?
Yeah.
This is what I chose to do to make a living.
Right.
And trust me, I've done a lot of stuff for no money, but that was my choice. And it was like, well, let me do this. I'll get more experience, but I'm 67 now. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I've made my share of mistakes.
Right.
And if you're an entrepreneur or not, I mean, you name me one writer, painter, photographer that doesn't have like a horror story.
Right. I think they all do. All creatives does. I think the difference from that perspective, my own opinion is people see creative vocations as, well, it's subjective to what the value of it is. I mean, versus a doctor or a lawyer, it's a check in the box. It's a standard system. Like, okay, well, a doctor should be making X dollars per whatever. Now that's even skewed now with all the Medicare and all that going on. But at one point in time, they're thinking anyone that's a creative individual, then their value is subjective to whoever wants to use the service, buy the service, or that. And if they don't come from that world, they don't understand, why is that painting worth $1 million? It might not be to you, but it is to somebody else that sees the value in it.
Right.
But,
because I know people that, so I have a friend that paints and I still think she doesn't sell them. I said, Barb, these are great. I said, that's worth $10,000. She went, what?
yeah.
I said, yeah, it's worth $10,000. I think you could sell that for 10,000. I'm not buying it.
Right. Somebody
will buy that.
Yeah.
No. And it's taken me a while to be able to say, I've done it before. I remember, this reminds me. So I shot a lot of films for free or low money because I wanted that experience, and you want to have it in your portfolio to show to the next, hey, I did this,
right.
Because if you haven't, I knew a guy that was like the biggest commercial cinematographer.
Okay.
And he was like the best guy to shoot beer. He had it wired.
Yeah.
And he was asked to do a beer commercial, but it was dark beer. He had only done light beer, and they passed on him.
Right. Because he's only done light beer.
Yeah.
They're worried they can't do the dark beer.
It's like, I did some maternity pictures. I saw this woman, like, looked like she was about ready to have the baby in 5 minutes. And I needed some maternity pictures because you get asked to do maternity pictures and they want to see,
what you've done in the past.
Yeah. So it was my choice to do it for free.
Right.
Some of the best pictures I've ever taken, because there was no, like, I never feel pressured, but everything just aligned properly. And, I'm not always going to take a great picture. I understand that.
Yeah.
There's, you have to plan, you have to have the right, it's like, I don't shoot film anymore. I shoot digital. Right lens, the right shutter speed, the right ASA, the right f-stop. Like, because I've had people like, I'll take a picture and then they'll look at the back of the camera and they'll go, "Oh, wow, what camera is that?"
Right.
And I always say, it's not the Arrow, it's the Archer,
Yeah.
you
That's a
know?
true statement. I mean, because we can buy the most expensive camera, and my pictures are not going to look as good as yours.
Well, it's like I have a set price I go out for. And it's funny because if you're and expensive and cheap is relative,
Yep.
right? So I'll say, well, I get this much. Oh, wow, you're expensive.
Right.
Not really. That's where I place my value. And what the truth is that I'm not really expensive. It's just more than you want to spend.
Yeah.
And you can't take that personally. And then it's up to me and depends on who they are. And especially if they're kind and they called me because they like my work, but they can't afford it. And I've done it before. I'll say, what can you afford?
Yeah.
Because I'll want to do it because it makes me better and I get more work out of it. But it's got to be mutually beneficial.
Right.
You know, I mean, because I've had people that were just nasty and they wanted like a ton of pictures and the rate was commensurate with other people. She thought I was joking around. I said, "You want all this stuff?" And oh no, I could get that done much cheaper.
Right.
And I was okay. Good luck. Go ahead. Go ahead. You can't get pissed off.
Yeah.
And so now, like, I don't. Of course, I care about the money because I was just going to say I don't care about the money, but and you can't think you're going to get hired because you need the job.
Right.
You know, you have to earn the business. It's like, take your podcast for example. I'm not getting paid. You're not getting paid.
Yep. Nope.
And if you decide to go out and get a sponsor, they're going to want to, the obvious questions, how many people watch it and da 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 da. And, I mean, I looked at your followers. I didn't care. Of course I looked at the number.
Right.
I was like, it's a perfect time for me to be able to tell you who I am. And, I find out who you are. And because I'm really all about being mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
Or not even, or just being of service to somebody else without expecting anything in return, So, I was going to say, I've taken pictures on my iPhone of people on the beach, not for jobs, because it's kind of hard to show up with an iPhone when they are expecting you to have,
Right.
3 of these around your neck, but they can't tell the difference.
Right. And the tech's now there in the iPhones. I mean, they're doing full on movie productions with iPhones and cameras now. And like,
Oh,
it's insane.
yeah, there's an Apple commercial where it's actually they have the iPhone 17 and it's it's the story, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because I had somebody a couple of summers ago that wanted pictures and really liked my work, but she didn't want to pay. And I
Right.
said, "Well, what do you want to pay?" And she threw out a number. I said, "Okay, I could still do it, but I'm going to show up with my iPhone. You'll get the pictures back faster. You're not going to know the difference.
Yep.
Trust me." No, no, you can't show up with they don't know the difference.
Right. They don't know the difference.
No.
It's the skill and the artist of it. Like I said, I mean, I can go buy $1 million camera, point at the same thing that you're pointing at, and my picture is going to look nowhere near yours because I don't know which way to angle it, the lighting, any of those features inside
Yeah,
there. The focus points, there's a lot more that you've learned.
Yeah,
doing
you
it.
might get closer to it than the next person because you understand technology and, but you're more of an engineer brain
Yeah.
than a creative brain. Not that you're not creative. I mean, I don't know you that well, but it's, um, if you're working for a big company and they have a budget
Right.
and they say, "Hey Chuck, we need da 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 da." You fly a drone, don't you? You told me you have a drone, right?
Yep.
And yeah, yeah. Why don't you do it? I'll give you the money. Well, number one, if let's say you're like, I don't know, it takes you away from what you're really supposed to be doing.
Right.
Because I've met real estate agents that do their own pictures. And I'm like, good. Because I almost really don't want to work with you because the 3 or 4 hours that it's going to take you, let's just say it takes 4 hours because you can't fight time.
Right. It takes time.
You got to take the pictures. You got to sort of process them. You got to upload them, which you got to do anyway. But let's say that's 4 hours that guess what you could have been doing?
Right.
You could have made another, I don't know, 20 calls to try and find a client.
Yeah.
Because that's your job. Your job's not to take pictures.
Right.
I actually did a really funny video with a real estate agent friend of mine because I got my drone caught in the net at Topgolf.
Okay.
Did I tell you this story?
No, huh?
So I got my drone. So I fly, sometimes I fly what's called, I do point-to-point flying. That's what they call it, DJI.
Yep.
I call it motion control. So like I can, start at 30A and I make
Yeah, you GPS plotted out, sort of like it.
a GPS plotted out. And then I bring it back and I hit a button and it dink, 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 dink,
Yeah.
So I was doing it over at Topgolf and I was trying to be cool, or not trying to be cool, but I was like trying to show my friend something. And I changed my mind in the middle of it and it flew into the net. And long story short, I turned lemons into lemonade. And I said, hey, Terry, I want to do a spot with you where I see you, and I'll send it to you,
Okay.
where I see you and I'm just some random person because I'm going to shoot it like I'm just some random guy shooting videos. And I see you at the net at Topgolf and you're looking up. And so it's basically, I made it like she did it.
Okay.
So I turned it into a video.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, lady, what are you doing? Oh, I got what? I can't hear you. And then I get out of the car and I go, what? You flew your drone into the net? Which
was your drone?
It was my drone. And yeah, I go, what? Oh, I'm a real estate agent. And there's no houses around here. Well, I was just showing people the area and I got it caught. And I go, they pay people to do, I said, there's people that actually do that for a living. And then it's kind of a knock on real estate agents. Sorry. And I said, yeah, but you got to pay them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, but they don't, and I just kind of, that's where the story.
Yeah. Back to the storytelling.
I mean, you could be the greatest drone pilot in the world and the greatest photographer in the world, but it's kind of like Steve Jobs. I think Steve Jobs' greatest strength was not like Steve Wozniak, where Wozniak was like,
building the components, putting the pieces together, the engine, the tech of it.
Yeah, and
selling
Steve
it.
was, marketing and driving people.
Yep.
And obviously not the nicest person in the world, but he was a boss.
Yeah. And he drove to what you wanted, and everyone bought on with it. I mean, he sold you something with his 3 points. I mean, you knew there's 1, 2, 3 points were coming out in his black turtleneck and jeans, and you're going to get them at the end of the day. You'd be like, I need that. And he just made 10 sentences. It was like, I didn't know. I needed that.
I loved when he said, oh, just one more thing,
Yep.
And yeah, he came out with the same sneakers, same jeans, and the black turtleneck. And Apple never did market research. They told you
What the market was.
You're going to love this.
Yep.
Oh, I watched every single one of his, what was it, the worldwide developer conference?
Yeah. So he did the developer conference, but he would always do the product release events.
Yeah.
So the product events was where he was in his element doing those. And again, storytelling, back to storytelling.
And that's what he's saying about Pixar.
Yeah.
It was a Charlie Rose interview, I called them conversations. It wasn't really an interview. And I love Charlie Rose. And unfortunately, he got taken down with the sexual misconduct stuff. So they went, Charlie, you got to go. And then James Lipton from Inside the Actor Studio. These guys were unbelievable at having conversations
Yeah.
with people. And Steve Jobs said, because Charlie Rose said, "What's up with your stock? It's up and down." And he says, "Well," he said, "people think we're a technology company. We're not. We're a studio. We tell stories,
Yeah.
And like I said, the technology is not going to save a bad story.
Right.
I often look at several movies. One of them, friends of mine did. Well, I became friends with them, and it's called For Lovers Only. It was by the Polish brothers, and they shot it on the first iteration of the Canon 5D
Okay.
because it shot video, and um, one of the brothers was in it. One of them shot it. They both wrote it, I think, and then another friend was the sound guy, and the so they worked for free. And then they had one actor that her name was Stana Kedik. She was in some TV shows, beautiful, like Serbian, but an American accent.
Okay.
And the story was about one of the brothers. They run into each other in Paris. They shot it in Paris. They had an affair, and then they ran into each other 7 years later, and then it takes off, and it was such an amazing. It was a great story,
Yeah.
but it was shot with such freedom.
Right.
You couldn't tell what it was shot on. Nobody could say, "Oh, that's the Panaflex with the or the Airflex or the." They were capturing a story, and then they shot in a lot of places for free. Their budget was like whatever she got paid, which she agreed to do for like a minimum rate,
Okay.
and her first class airfare. That was her only, and their hotels.
Right.
There was another movie by Danny Boyle. Danny.
Yep. I know who Danny is.
So it was called 28 Days Later. It's about this disease that
Yeah.
a virus that gets out and turns you into like what
Sort
was
of like
that
a zombie type, Walking Dead zombies. Yeah.
So if somebody touches, they all. So the acting was great, but they shot it on an early Canon video, like cinema video camera,
Okay.
and this was before the red camera. It was an amazing story,
Right.
and actually, the look at so it looked different.
Yep.
But it was okay. It didn't bother me.
Right.
I mean, I don't think anybody I talked to that saw it said, "Yeah, it was shot, kind of crappy." And
I had no clue until you told me. I watched the movie multiple times and thought it was good. Like I had no, didn't even know the pixels or whatever, or the screen was bad. Who knows? The story was good. That's the difference now. Like,
yeah,
so many of our movies now, like I feel, I don't know, it probably started prior to COVID, but the storytelling of it has just gotten bad. It's like we can't produce good story movies anymore. Every once in a while, you'll get maybe one a year instead of like half a dozen that we used to getting beforehand. But now you're getting one every couple of years.
well, that's the thing, and that's what I want to start doing down here. And I've already started, and but you have to understand marketing too. Like, one of the reasons why I'm doing the podcast is that, I mean, it's no secret. Part of me doesn't want to give this away, but the line at the front door is long.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in the back door because my job is to make a living. Part of my job is to make a living, be happy with what I do, not be miserable in my job. And how do I do that?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, I don't want to do anything unethical.
Right.
So there's a back door. And, I've done this before where when I lived in LA, I was interviewing people about what they did. Those same people, if I called them and said, "Hey, I'm a cinematographer," da, 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 how many called me back?
Right.
As soon as I told them I was filming them, "Oh, really? I had movie stars I filmed. How'd you get an interview with Tia Carrere?" "Well, I worked with her once before. She happens to live close to me. She gave, we met in blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "Yeah, I'll help you."
Right.
And then she hired me. I followed her all day with I think I shot it on the iPhone actually.
Okay.
She'd been nominated for a Grammy, like best. They give Grammys for a lot of different things.
There's new awards that keep
Yeah,
coming up
and I
every
think it
year.
was best Hawaiian music or
Okay.
something. I interviewed Tia. I've interviewed Rob Morrow. I've interviewed, and I remember a writer friend of mine said to me once, he says, "You'd be surprised who's sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring." My friend went scouting with Robert Redford years ago, and they were in France. And this kind of surprised me because Redford didn't seem like, egotistical and he wasn't, but he said something to the effect of, "How come nobody's noticing me?" Which
Right.
really, like, Harrison Ford hates
Yeah.
to be,
Doesn't like to be recognized at all.
yeah, you want to, I don't want to, it's like, I don't want to be famous. I want to make a living. I want to be happy with what I do. So that's what I want to try and bring, to sort of culminate
Yeah.
to what you're doing. And I appreciate this is, the buzz I want to create is that, I can help your business
Right.
and, with what I do, but also with how I think, because I'm pretty good at gauging how people, when they look at something, they perceive it. And I learned this from a German cameraman I worked with that really liked me, and I didn't know it because he was kind of gruff. And one of his assistants said, he really likes you. And I go, really? Yeah, he thinks you're great. And I was the second assistant,
Okay.
but I worked really hard and I figured out a way to do my job faster because I was really understaffed. And he says, "Ed, don't you understand what I do, what my job is?" He says, "We're alchemists. I can direct the viewer's eye to that area of the screen or that, we have the ability to um, kind of control what people see and hear."
Right.
And, some of the best movies, like I've been doing a deep dive on Stanley Kubrick. The opening and the end of 2001, Space Odyssey, there's no dialogue. And I don't know if you remember There Will Be Blood
Oh.
with it won the Oscar for, I know
Yeah.
it won the Oscar for best cinematography, but sometimes you don't have to say anything,
Yeah.
and I've been doing a deep dive on a lot of directors lately where, and Stanley Kubrick edited his own films where he'll linger on a shot, a reaction shot, or, let's say I said something to you off color or I called you a name
Yeah.
and you don't say anything. And it's just, we, the audience, I with the camera, we're just looking at you. Audiences are pretty smart, right? They're going to know, well, one person can go, wow, he's pissed
Right.
or whatever, because especially with Kubrick, he didn't give many interviews because his movies ended kind of like, what was that? Especially 2001. He said, "You figure out what happened in the end? What was that big black thing? And why was the monkeys throwing the bone? And
Yeah.
why did you cut to the inside of a spaceship?"
That's a good perspective. When I watch his movies, I've not really paid that attention. So he wants
Yeah.
viewers to take their own conclusion of how it it, it ended or
Yeah,
what the
like why
meaning
did
was.
Jack Nicholson go crazy
Yeah.
in The Shining and um he already made 13 movies and they're all pretty much classics,
Yeah.
and
That wraps this all back up to it's all about the storytelling. It's all about.
yeah, I mean, I had somebody that wanted me to do a podcast with well, I wanted to do a podcast with her, and she said, "Well, I want to do, like, this is what I want to do." And I went, it was, "I think you need to do your own podcast then.
Yeah.
Maybe this is not going to work." "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, you want things that I'm doing a podcast. It's my podcast. It's, I have ownership of it. I want to help you. You're helping me, but she wanted me to turn it into like a reality show, TV show. And I said, I've been there. I've done that. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I don't have enough years left. And, we had an expression in Hollywood, and I didn't live in Hollywood. I lived in Topanga Canyon, but it was all great ideas go to Hollywood to die.
That's a true statement. There's a lot of
I
stuff that goes
mean,
out there and doesn't come back.
it's well, we don't want to do a movie about the movie business. It's not, we don't want to do. We don't want to. I mean, I saw the greatest movie. I was surprised I'd never heard of it. A friend of mine turned me into it. I can't remember the name of it, but it was kind of from a dog's point of view, and there's been a few of them,
Yeah.
but this one was just wow, mind blowing. And it's like I went to Nigeria uh, to teach for a week. They paid for my expenses, but they didn't pay. And it was because I met a guy named Louis P-S-Y, Sohoyos.
Okay.
Louis made the documentary, um, won the Oscar for Best Documentary about the killing of dolphins in Japan. He's going to hate me. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll watch almost anything. I did not want to watch that
Yeah.
about the killing of dolphins. I love dolphins. I have
Yeah.
a lot of dolphin video that I've shot. And we had lunch. I met him, and I was like, shit. My wife and I went to lunch with him, and it's like, damn, I got to watch that movie now. And it was like a bloodbath. And anyway, I got to know him. He recommended me to teach.
Okay.
He knew because Louis was a National Geo photographer, and he knew another these were like big guys,
Yeah.
National Geo, to go to Nigeria and teach film. And then I ended up bringing Lee Zlotov, who became a friend. He's the guy that created MacGyver.
Okay.
And we both, because they wanted a cinematographer, a writer, a development person, a sales. They wanted us to pass on our knowledge over there because they have a big film industry.
Yeah.
And it's like they sell DVDs out in the street, And when I was there, what was the story? My ADD's kicked in now. What were we talking about?
You're talking about doing photography, Net Geo.
Right, but before, so I think the point of the story is I said I was in the class and I had like 50, 60 students, all different ages. And oh, I know what it was. If you want to get people emotionally involved, kill the dog.
Yeah. Like Old Yeller.
Kill the dog.
Yeah.
Or the dog dies. So there's a scene in Jaws in the beginning where this guy's throwing a stick to his dog, and I can't remember the dog's name, and he's throwing a stick, and the dog comes back, and he's throwing a stick, and he's looking for the dog. So I was talking about that scene, and I actually showed it. It took a while to get it all hooked up, but I said, so, and they were all like deadpan.
Yeah.
I go, see, Spielberg, the shark ate the dog. You didn't see it happen, but you didn't have to because the dog didn't come back. And you knew there was already one shark death. He goes, so you just kill the dog. So there's a guy in the back of the class who was laughing. He was the only one. I said, what are you laughing about? He goes, Ed, we eat dogs here.
Oh, geez.
and so, it's like, bringing it back to like what I do here in this area, it's still story, man. Everybody's got a unique story.
Right.
I used to go to where I met Louis, and I've met some really amazing people. I used to go to this group called Metal. It was like going to TED Talk every Saturday. And if you went for the first time, you were asked, okay, everybody, who's new? 10 people raised
Yeah.
their hands. It was like 100, 200 people there. All right, you need to come on stage and you need to tell us who you are, what you do, and what makes you cool. I got it right away. A lot of people are like, well, I'm not really cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's something unique about you, right? So I was like, I understood that it was a way for people to get to know me
Right.
and come and ask me questions. And I had a really cool story. I have a bunch of them. But I said, well, I'm Ed Gutentag. I'm a cinematographer, content creator. Um, who you are, what you do. And what makes me cool is that I can pretty much guarantee you without a doubt that I'm the only person, not just in this room, but for thousands of miles, that spent a day with the Dalai Lama and flew on a plane together with him. So people can't, what, how did that,
Right.
so, so, that's what I want to try and do is like, hey, Chuck, what makes you unique? Like, I mean, I just met you in person. We talked on the phone, but
Yep.
I'm fascinated with cybersecurity and military stuff, and because it's secret,
Right. Yeah.
and like last night I met a guy at a Hanukkah celebration from Israel that was one of Netanyahu's bodyguards. Left because he couldn't stand ducking bullets and bombs all the
Right.
time, moved to Chicago, and has a huge locksmith company. So he's broken into a few places,
Yeah.
right?
He's figured it out.
So that's kind of what I want to do is like, which I'm sure, same for you is
Yeah.
like, who's here in the Panhandle? Because this area really, to my liking, hasn't been mined.
Right. Yep. It hasn't been. I mean, there's so many
There's,
people that I'm meeting around here that's unique, interesting, that come from different places that we want to share their stories, connect the dots, and make the community in the area better. Because if we start all connecting together, it's going to be that,
well,
it's that backdoor trick that you're talking about. Like now I know Ed's here. I need cinematography done. I'm going to give you a call if I need something
yeah,
creative.
and it's like, I also realized because as you get older, I get tired earlier and I'm in fairly good shape, but I kind of, I've lived with certain levels of money.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't matter
Right.
because, it's like, you know who Viktor Frankl is?
I don't.
Was? He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning.
Okay.
That he was in concentration camp for 6 years and got released, and he wrote this book, and he became hugely, hugely famous. And he said he learned that they could take everything from us in that particular terrible instance,
Right.
your clothing, your food, your dignity, but they can't really take your attitude.
Yeah.
That's up to you, And, because some people say to me, well, it's not my choice. I have to do it. No, bullshit.
Right.
It is your choice. I sometimes give friends rides to work and I tell them how much I want. Well, why are you charging me that? You don't have to go.
Yeah.
You're the one that needs to get to work.
Right.
It's not even really much about the money. It's my time.
Yeah.
And I don't really make any money.
Right. And it's what do you want to do with your time and what, and
because I could be doing something else.
Yeah.
And that's what I told my primary care guy. I said, I don't need to do this really, even though it's up to me if I really need the money.
Right.
Because I'll survive.
Yeah.
Something else will come through.
Right.
So, it's back to this metal meeting and what's cool about you.
Yeah.
And some people it was men only. And some of the men would get up and say, well, I'm going to change the world. Yeah, you and 5,000 other people. How?
Right.
How are you going to change the world? Mine was kind of easy because I could prove I was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all want to make things better, but how are you going to do it?
Right. Yeah.
Because because Charlie Rose asked Steve Jobs, how are you going to tell people you're not a technology company and you're a studio? They're going to see it.
Right.
I mean, wasn't there like 4 Toy Stories?
Yeah, there's 4. And all the rest of Pixar is created nowadays and everything after that. Yep.
I remember when I was working on a movie called Mighty Joe Young, there was a joke kind of email going around that the studios were going to sue Pixar because their stuff was too good.
Yeah.
Their stories were too good.
That's funny.
And it's like, you know, we all get busy and caught up and we become human doings instead of human beings.
Right.
And sometimes you got to slow down, you
Yeah.
know, and just, you know, I find that, you know, last year I took a job because I felt I had
Right.
to have money coming in. I didn't want to do it. I had major judgment about people that do it.
Yeah.
But I did it, and I did it for a year. And it was, what do they call it when you have to reach certain levels? It was performance-based.
Yep. Performance-based client.
And I lasted a year. Nobody thought I would last that long because it was getting people to go on timeshare tours.
Okay.
I found out about it because I picked up a guy and doing Lyft, and I was very judgmental about him. I was like, I'd never do that job. And boy, there I was, man. I had to swallow my pride. And I got pretty good. I was certainly not the best.
Yeah.
I wasn't the worst. But when you're in a situation that is depressing, anxiety, that's when you start to change.
Right.
You know, because you're like, shit, this kind of sucks, man. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm not going to kill myself. You know, I'm not going to, all right, I got to change, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I had a guy on a few weeks ago, Kurt, and he talked about that for 26 of when you're in those situations, just put yourself in a different perspective. Like,
oh, Kurt, who I know?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So what was the perspective of you're doing? Why are you doing this for? Are you doing it for the money? Is it doing to make you happy? Is it bringing you joy? If it's not, then you need to change your perspective on what you're doing it for. If it's not, then you need to go find something else that you're passionate about.
Well, that's kind of what one of Frankel's quotes is: if you don't like the situation, you got to change it, you know?
Right.
And Kurt's wife, Cindy, is, because I called her and because I know her better than Kirk or
It was Kurt.
Kurt, yeah. And I've met Kurt, but Cindy's an interior designer, and Cindy was a cold call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I called a whole bunch of people because I have another business.
Okay.
I sell hand knotted rugs. I import from Turkey, Morocco,
Nice.
and I have actually a Turkish partner who's in Atlanta, and I just called a bunch of designers and I said, "Hey, I'm Ed," and da da da. Da. And Cindy's a great customer.
Yeah.
Great customer. She, you know, she's not afraid to, you know, like I remember the first couple of times and this is you learn from people.
Right.
It's like, wow, here's this woman. She's been doing it a long time, and she's admitting to me. She goes, "Can you teach me more about rugs?" Absolutely. I love talking about that, you know,
Yeah.
and because I learned.
Right.
Yeah, it's.
Thank you
Hey,
again
thank
for
you.
doing this. We'll post all the ways that people can connect you on social media. You're all over social media. That's how I connected to your website. But how can the people listen to you and follow you today once this is posted on Instagram and where you're at?
So and I want to ask you about this too. So I have Gutentag podcast
Okay.
on Instagram. I believe I think I have to check Gutentag podcast on YouTube. And then I think I have to finish something for the podcast on iTunes.
Yep.
And then I'm going to put it everywhere because the heavy lifting is setting it up. And then once you have it, you just hit a button.